Watch 10 creepy hotel mysteries that are still unsolved. Number 10. The murder of Corporal Mama Ridings. From 1927-31, Mama Ridings worked as a physical therapist at the Warm Springs Infantile Paralysis Foundation in Georgia. During that time, one of her patients was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was seeking treatment for polio and reportedly considered Ridings to be his favorite nurse. Over a decade later, President Roosevelt was leading the country through World War II and Ridings was serving as a corporal in the Women's Army Corps. On August 29, 1943, the 32-year-old Ridings was stationed at Camp Atterbury in Edinburgh, Indiana. She went on leave that afternoon and traveled to Indianapolis to check into the Claypool Hotel, where she reportedly had a date scheduled. Number 9. The disappearance of Claudia Kiszczak. In May 2000, Claudia Kiszczak worked as an assistant editor for Frommer's Travel Guides in New York. She was scheduled to participate in a travel junket in Cuba and flew to Jamaica for the first part of the trip. However, the junket soon learned that they would be denied entry into Cuba, and since all flights back to New York were booked for the next several days, Kiszczak and another writer were rerouted to stay at the Beaches Resort in Negril. Number 8. The Biltmore Hotel Hauntings. During the 1920s, Thomas Fatty Walsh was a notable underworld figure from New York who ran most of his operations out of Florida. He was a frequent guest at the Biltmore Hotel in Coral Gables and often ran a speakeasy and casino out of his 13th floor suite. Number 7. The murder of Effie MacDonald. One of the most infamous serial killers of all time is the Boston Strangler, who murdered at least 13 women in the Boston area during the 1960s. Officially, the final Boston Strangler murder took place in January 1964, as he was eventually identified as Albert DeSalvo and captured in October of that year. Number 6. The disappearance of Jessica Kinsey. On December 26, 1995, 14-year-old Jessica Kinsey was supposed to be spending the day at a friend's house in her hometown of Union, Missouri. However, Jessica was picked up by 23-year-old Jimmy Hopkins, who paid his friend, Mark Henderson, to secretly drive them to Niagara Falls to get married. Jimmy told Mark that Jessica was pregnant with his child, but Mark noticed that Jessica seemed very quiet and morose during their trip. Number 5. The mysterious suicide of Jeffrey Daniel. On November 10, 1997, a man appearing to be in his late 30s checked into the Super 8 motel in Icon, South Carolina. He paid cash to rent the room for 3 days but did not identify himself, telling the staff he wanted to leave all that behind. That night, the man ordered a pizza for his room but did not answer the door. A Do Not Disturb sign was seen hanging on the door with a handwritten message, "I am not responsible for the consequences." Number 4. The disappearance of Cameron Remmer. On September 29, 2011, 29-year-old Cameron Remmer left his home in Encinitas, California, for a business trip to San Francisco and checked into the Fairmont Hotel. He was planning to remain in the city for a month with hopes of expanding his medical marijuana business. Number 3. The Hauntings of La Posada. In 1932, a 6-acre estate in Santa Fe was converted into La Posada de Santa Fe Resort and Spa, one of the most historic hotels in New Mexico's state capital. The centerpiece of La Posada is a 3-story Victorian mansion known as the Stab House, named after a wealthy family who once owned the property. The mansion was built in 1882 by a prominent resident named Abraham Stab. Number 2. The abduction of Denise Clinton. In 1965, a couple named Chelsea and Dorothy Reynolds managed the Great Plains Motel in Kansas City, Missouri. On July 7, their 2 grandchildren, 9-year-old Denise Clinton and her younger sister, traveled from Independence to spend the week with them at the motel. At approximately 2:20 a.m. the following morning, Dorothy was awoken by the sound of the bell ringing in the front office. She arrived to find a man asking to rent a room until he suddenly pulled out a gun and ordered her to hand over the money in the register. Dorothy gave the robber $246 before she was forced into the back bedroom. Chelsea and Dorothy were both bound and gagged with tape and heard the robber flee the scene. The couple soon managed to wrest themselves free, but were horrified to find that Denise was gone. Number 1. The disappearance of Joseph G. Edwards. Joseph G. Edwards was a 25-year-old African-American who worked as a porter at the Shamrock Motel in Vidalia, Louisiana. On July 12, 1965, G. showed up for work at the motel